Yeah, thank you, Dr. Kanjuri. It's my pleasure to introduce Ms. Janet Eskelsen Charles, the author of the book Paris Library. Fortunately, we have her in our book session, in our book club. It's actually a very great opportunity for us to have you with us at this session. Ms. Janet, do you hear me? But unfortunately, we don't have your voice. Maybe your mic is turned off.
There we go. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for your invitation, and thank you for having me with your book club today.
Oh, thank you too. Actually, about half an hour before you joined us, we had Dr. Nikoy Tabar. You can spot him just, I don't know, yes, he raised a hand. Yes, he is actually a Persian writer of novels. She's very famous in our country, Iran. She reviewed and actually had a critic about your book. And maybe all of us have some question about your book, the characters, and how the story goes on. But before that, we want to invite you to actually say your comments and whatever you would like to say about your book. And maybe you want to have some stories about your book, something that interfere at the printed book. Here we are at your presence. I want to actually give the session and the mic to you. Okay, go on, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Is everyone bilingual?
Yes, but actually, we manage your English. Okay, but you can maybe use simple English for that reason that maybe all the person can understand you.
All right. Well, I thank you again for your kind invitation. I would love to show you some photographs of the real life librarians. If I can screen share, let me see. So, do you see what I see?
Yes, surely we do. Okay, go on. Thank you.
So this is Paris in 1939, and the blue arrow here is Odil's neighborhood. I mentioned that she lives across the street from a train station, the Gare Saint-Lazare, that she walks by a church with an ebony dome, that's the Saint-Augustin, and then she walks up this narrow side street, Rue de Téhéran, or Tehran Street, to go to work. Over here with the green arrow, we see Notre Dame Cathedral, and in the shadow of Notre Dame Cathedral, we have the Polish Library.
Yes, sorry, I interrupt. I think that you've stopped from the first slide. Would you go on, please, to the next slide? We just see your cover.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Do you see the map?
من نمیبینم دوستان شما مپ میبینید؟ No, unfortunately not. Just I think that
we
is
just
full
see
cover.
the cover, which is the first page. So if you can please go to the second slide, we can see the map.
What about like this?
Yes, there it is. Okay.
All right. It looks like I can't use the larger screen with the PowerPoint. So excuse me. So here we have the blue arrow, and this is Odil's neighborhood, where we have the Gare Saint-Lazare train station. She lives across the street. We have the church with the ebony dome, the Saint-Augustin Church. And here we have the narrow side street, the Rue de Téhéran, or Tehran Street. The green arrow over here, we see Notre Dame Cathedral on the island. And in the shadow of Notre Dame, we have the Polish Library, which the Nazis invaded on day 3 of the occupation. And for fun, this black arrow is my neighborhood. So this is where I live, and this is the Gare de Lyon train station. My husband works there. and we live near this park. So that situates you in Paris a little bit. And here is the library in 1939. It's an international staff from the US, Canada, Russia, France, Switzerland, and England. Our story starts here. You'll see this photo again. This is one of the inspirations for the book. It's the information card from the 1930s for the library. And you can see that the library is located on the Rue de Téhéran or Tehran Street, which I think is really lovely. Here we have the beginning of the book with the photo, and we also have the last lines in the book. The American Library in Paris, open daily. So it's the beginning of the book, the first image I saw, and the last part of the book, the words that I used at the end. This is a photo, the inspiration for my character Margaret. I love the wide brim of her hat and wonder what secret she's hiding. In the book, I talk about the white pebbled path, and I also talk about the row of pansies or petunias, so you can see that I was faithful about describing the library at the time. Here we have August 1939 with war on the way. The U.S. Ambassador William Bullitt advised, in view of the situation prevailing in Europe, it is advisable that American citizens return to the United States. So here we have Dorothy Reeder and the Canadian Evangeline Turnbull preparing for war by putting important documents and books in the safe. Here we have the soldier service. 100,000 books were sent to English and French soldiers during World War II. During World War II. Miss Reeder created the soldier service 3 days after war was declared. She said, "No other thing possesses that mystical faculty to make people see with other people's eyes. The library is a bridge of books between cultures." And I love that image of books being bridges between people. The record for wrapping a care package was 1 minute and 40 seconds, and many volunteers helped, from the YMCA to the Quakers to the Red Cross. Here we have the beginning of the occupation.
Ms. Janet, sorry, I think that we've missed your presentation screen. Would you please share it again with us?
Oh, something happened? Oh dear.
Oh yes, it's a bad version, I think.
No, it's a typical online event. There's always a little something that happens.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me know. So this is my favorite photo of Dorothy Reeder. And I was really an obsessive Googler when I was researching this book. And being obsessive about Googling really was helpful because every day there are new archives being added, libraries and archivists upload documents. Things go on sale. This photo I found on eBay for $25, so it was very inexpensive. It took me 10 years to publish this book, to write and publish this book. So when I was feeling depressed about so many rejections, I would look at Dorothy Reeder at this photo and think if she could face the Nazis, I could face sending out more letters to editors and to agents. So this is a picture of her in 1936 at the library. And as you know from the book, before the Nazis invaded Paris, Miss Reeder sent away her staff for their own safety, but she remained at her post. The directress dealt with Dr. Hermann Fuchs, the Nazi library protector. They were on friendly terms before the war because they attended the same conferences on libraries. And it must have been very strange for them to be on opposite sides of the war. As you know, she and her colleagues delivered books to Jewish readers. Here we have another photo of the directress, Dorothy Reeder. I love this huge telephone, and I wonder what she would think of people's telephones today. Dorothy Reeder returned to the United States in 1941, but she did not stay for very long. She went to Bogota, Colombia in South America to train librarians for 2 years. She then worked for the Red Cross in England and in France after the war. She returned to the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., where she ended her career. So in the 1940s, she worked on 3 continents. It's simply amazing. Here we have the Countess Clara de Chambrun. She was the only trustee to remain in Paris. The others returned to the safety of the States. She was summoned to the office of the Nazi library protector because the ALP had been denounced because its collection contained anti-German journals and political cartoons. The scene in the book that describes her meeting with the library protector came from her memoir. And she went with her secretary, and in place of the secretary, I put my character Oudil. This is a photo of Claire de Chambrun at her home near the Luxembourg Garden. I also purchased this photo online. She earned a PhD from the Sorbonne at the age of 48. She was a Shakespeare scholar as well as a novelist. She translated Shakespeare's work into French. And I read her memoir, Shadows Lengthen, as research for the book. So here we have that original photo again. Boris is standing in front of the window. He started working at the library as an assistant, as a page. He worked his way up to head librarian. He was originally from Russia and he spoke several languages. During the occupation, the Gestapo shot Boris through the lung and took him prisoner. He survived and worked at the library until he retired. He never stopped smoking his beloved Gitan cigarettes. Here, he's holding his daughter Hélène in his arms, and I was thrilled to interview her and her brother for this book. This is a staff photo of the library, and this is the library love story. These 2 characters, Helen Fickweiler and Peter Ustinov, I mentioned them briefly in the book. When they returned to the States, they got married, and I was able to interview their daughter, Elizabeth, for the book. This final image is a bit about my new book, about Jessie Carson, a librarian at the New York Public Library. During World War I, she traveled to the north of France, where 90% of the land and buildings had been destroyed by the war. In France, at that time, there were no children's sections in libraries. There were no open stacks. In municipal libraries, books were kept in a closet. They were arranged by date of arrival or size. She created 5 libraries in the north before moving to Paris to create a library in the working-class Belleville neighborhood. The library celebrates its centennial this year. At this point in France, there were no female librarians. She helped feminize the profession by... Oh, did I lose you?
No. Go on, please. Thank you.
Sorry. So she helped feminize the profession by creating library schools for women in Paris. She's credited with revolutionizing the French library system. So that's my new book that I'm working on.
Gosh, thank you very much, Ms. Janet. It was a very surprising photos. Actually, it was the answer for one of our questions that raised just beginning of the session, that how much this story, your book, I mean, could be a real story. But we'll get on to that later at the end of the session. And at this time, we have a surprise for you. You know, it's a yes. Actually, it's a proverb in Russian, I think, but I can't tell the Russian language. Essentially, she said the book is given life several times. Once when it is written, and the other times when it receives some critic from the good reviewers. And here at this session, we had your book reviewed by Dr. Nikui, and a briefing of the review is being presented by Mr. Babai. He is actually right now. Yes, he's right now with us. And we'll hear it in English. Oh, that's our surprise.
Wow. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, may I start?
Yes,
okay,
yes,
welcome, Janet. Okay, I want to call you Janet because your last name is really hard for me to pronounce. So
that's perfect, yes.
I'm much easier to call you Janet. Okay, it's not Escalslian, okay, something like that. Before you came, okay, you attended the meeting. We had Dr. Nikui Tabar, okay, to talk about your book. I just want to summarize all that. Then I mentioned, okay, my own ideas too. As you said, okay, the novel takes place in two different times and places and told by two narrators.
You're talking so quickly.
So the novel
You're
takes
talking
place.
so quickly. You talk like you're from New York. I'm
Is
from
it?
Montana. We talk slow in Montana. Don't be from
Okay,
New York.
I'll try. Yes, sure. I got it. Sure. Yes. Is it okay now?
There we go.
So as you said, yes, the novel takes place in two different times, in two different places, and is told by two narrators. The first time it is in Paris from 1939 to 1944, which is related to the events of the Second World War and its impact on the atmosphere of the city of Paris. Of course, okay, we see most of events in American library in Paris, and most of the characters are library staff, and their interactions, the events, okay, take place in that space. The main character and narrator of these parts is Oudil. Suchet. Oudil is a young girl who is in love with books and considers the library as her home. The second place is in the US, Montana, okay, in Freud, a small city there. From 1983 to 1988, the narrator is Lily, a teenage girl who is really eager to get to know her mysterious old neighbor, Oudil. Of course, at first, okay, she saved her by asking him to interview. And during the story, we find out, okay, why Oudil is there and how Oudil is, okay, in an American city. And of course, I think Lily is us, okay, as the reader. The questions we have in mind, okay, they are asked, okay, through Lily. The novel is very attractive, considering the image it presents of the library space, the different sections of the library, the shelves, books, even the dewey numbers of the library staff's personality are even proportional, okay, to the sections they work in. Many parts of the novel of Kafka on the Shore also takes place in the library, but with a different style and idea. The realism of the novel, the Paris library, appealed me, and since Mrs. Nikui Tabar, myself have always been, okay, she has always been eager to work in a library. Oudil's feelings and passion were completely understandable, okay, to her. Apart from the physical space of the library, we encounter people who seem to be the spirit of the library, or perhaps the spirit of the library has penetrated into their bodies. The main characters in the library are people who are different from other people when dealing with them, especially at the ceremonial parties, big parties held there. And it can be seen well in the police center, in the parties, okay, that married husbands, okay, have there. These kind, brave, and friendly people do not create tension. And even in times of war and when they receive bad news, they master their stress and the conditions well, and they wait patiently and bravely, but their expectations is not passive. This close-knit group does everything they can do to keep the library calm in the middle of the war and occupation, and at the same time send books to different fronts to Jews who are banned from entering the library. The staff secretly take books to them, which is of course a dangerous job, but to Dr. Nikoui Tabar, we can't feel that it is really dangerous, and we are always sure that they will be safe, even those times that Audil is caught by the police of the Nazis. It seems that the book is the only rope that the person can hang on in order to save themselves. Although there were also target librarians like Boris and tries to destroy them, but the final winners are books and book readers. There are many moral lessons in the novel that people have reached through reading it and experience it, where Audil does Miss Reader, the directress of the library, shows the way like a guide, and Audil becomes Lily's guide, in 1983, during her years of living in when she is old. The lessons learned from past become Lily's lights. Here again, we see Audil, the reader, different from other people who are in Lily's time, different from her stepmother, different from her father, her friends, and other people in that town. Lily believes that Audil is the only one who asks about herself and not her brothers. She is the only one who stays with her mother and stepmother when they are sick and they need help and take care of them. And after the death of her mother, her house becomes her protector. She asks her to express her feelings. On the most difficult days, Audil shows her the way through the difficulties with books and reconciles her with life. In the book, novels are mentioned and novels are mentioned. For example, you mentioned the book, Their Eyes Were Watching God, and other books, and it has a really good feeling for us, because we were reviewing, the books, while, you mentioned them in the book. The important point that I must state, Mrs. Nikoui Tabar, is that according to the author of the novel, it is written based on a real event, which you answered it, of course, and real characters. But for her, this novel seemed less real, because in the novel we are not faced with serious challenges of humankind, especially in the midst of war. Even poverty and hunger don't deeply affect life. People remain ideal main characters. How is it possible for people to be so perfect or less perfect and remain ideal in the difficult conditions are? And books. Every book is like a medical prescription that is prescribed in different conditions, and it opens the way and even makes dying even easier. It escapes the detainees and makes it easier to bear the suffering and connects the hearts together. She doesn't know if the author in you, intended to show us the ideal world in the form of a library or not. Reading a book in the and the images of the first book, that we see a book covering a gun and sun covers the whole horizon from all above the book. It means that the only way to save is to return to books. In her opinion, this novel is a motivational novel to promote reading even in the most difficult conditions of life, and to realize dream that the author has in her head. It is the summary, of what Dr. Nikoui Tabar, talked before you attend the meeting, and I wanted, to share it with you. Thank you for your attention. I'll talk about my own idea, when it is my own time.
So my thank you, Ms. Bawai. Actually, there were some tough questions for you. The first one, the first one is that, you know, the story is too good to be true. Your language, actually.
Well,
So here you have your answer.
the people were really incredible. Those librarians were really incredible people. Dorothy Reeder, as I mentioned in the presentation, she taught librarians in Bogota, Colombia. She worked for the Red Cross in England and in France. She arrived back in France just days after the liberation, and she remained there for years. I mention it in the book, they all lost so much weight, and they all suffered. They all suffered so much. But I do think that they had that belief that books were bridges, and I think, for example, the Countess lost her daughter when the Countess's daughter was only 18, and her daughter was buried in a cemetery in Paris. So she remained in France during the war. Maybe she remained, of course, her husband was French, but her daughter was buried in Paris. So perhaps she wanted to stay close to her daughter. They all really had a difficult time, and they did the best they could. But I don't think I idealized things too much in the novel. I think the people really that I wrote about really were, they were there and they stayed at their jobs. Like a lot of people in Paris, I hope I showed how ordinary people lived through the war and lived through the occupation. They made some good choices. They made some bad choices. They did what they could.